U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is reportedly set to appoint Florida Senator and former opponent Marco Rubio to his cabinet.
Together with Donald Trump, we are going to make America not just great, but greater than it has ever been before.
Rubio made the short list for Trump's vice president pick, but the pair started their political relationship as rivals. The Florida senator was a staunch opponent to Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign when the two were fighting for the Republican nomination. But now, Little Marco, as Trump once called him, might have a big role in his administration as Secretary of State, one of the most senior members of cabinet. Matt Terrill is a Republican strategist and the former chief of staff to Marco Rubio during that 2016 presidential campaign. And he joins us now. Matt, it's good to see you again.
Great to be with you.
So, Matt, right now there's reports Marco Rubio may be Secretary of State, and no official announcement yet from Donald Trump. What's your sense of whether this is a done deal or still just in the mulling phase for the president-elect?
Well, it's up to the president-elect what he ends up doing here, of course, on any appointment that he makes to the cabinet or senior staff or other appointments that he'll make. But, you know, look, I think many look at this and say that Senator Marco Rubio makes a lot of sense. Certainly he's a very talented individual and certainly qualified for the position, particularly given the roles that he has played in the United States Senate, including, for example, being on the Foreign Relations Committee. So, look, the reality is this is someone who's certainly qualified for the position. I think many will see it that way, of course, and it's up to the president-elect to decide what he'll do. But certainly, I think a lot of folks view this as a great choice if he is, in fact, the choice here.
So, you know, Marco Rubio is seen, I would say, as a more conventional Republican on foreign policy issues than, say, Donald Trump was, with certainly going back to the 2016 race, described as a bit of a foreign policy hawk by a lot of people. How would you describe Marco Rubio's approach to foreign policy, and how do you see that meshing with Trump's stated goals from the campaign?
Well, look, he's certainly someone who's been out there on foreign policy, particularly given his roles in the United States Senate. And look, whether it's been on China or Iran or on other key policies, Ukraine, you know, a lot of that has frankly mapped with where President-elect Trump is. Take, for example, on Ukraine, you've seen in the past Senator Rubio really align in terms of the belief that to end that war very well will take negotiation. And you've seen President-elect Trump on the campaign trail just recently when he was campaigning for president here, talking about the importance of bringing leaders to the negotiation table, talking about how negotiation will be critical in terms of ending this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You look at other policies such as Iran, you know, maximum pressure on Iran. That's where President-elect Trump has been on Iran in the past when he was president. It's likely that I think at least he'll reinstate maximum pressure on Iran. You've seen Senator Rubio along the lines on that policy as well. So look, I think the reality is at the end of the day, it all comes down to what President-elect Trump wants to do with his agenda. This is his agenda, particularly on foreign policy, but on domestic policy as well. And whether it's the Secretary of State or his senior staff, they will be buying into and supporting his agenda, not the other way around.
But you know, you say that Senator Rubio has been in alignment with President Trump on Ukraine, for example, and you're right in that both have said there needs to be a negotiated end to that conflict. But Senator Rubio has said the U.S. needs to act in a way, and Europe and other allies, Canada included, needs to act in a way so that Ukraine enters those negotiations with the upper hand and from a position of strength, rather than just having this go on to a battle of attrition. Do you see total alignment in that position with some of the more MAGA elements of the party that have said, held up Ukraine aid, and J.D. Vance, who said that he doesn't really care what happens in Ukraine? There seems to be a gap there.
Well, I'm confident that anyone who joins the administration, the Trump administration, whether it's as Secretary of State or any other position, there could be a line with where President-elect Trump is going to be at on Ukraine or any other policy. And to that end, I think there's a lot we don't know yet. I mean, sure, on the campaign trail, we saw President-elect Trump talking about negotiation and bringing people to the table. But I think we're just going to know more once President-elect Trump is sworn in and becomes President Trump once again in January. And so to that end, I think we can look back and look at Senator Rubio or other individuals who are being potential contenders, if you will, or are being potential or named to the cabinet. But the reality is it comes down to what does President-elect Trump want to do? What is he going to do when it comes to Ukraine and the Russia conflict? What's he going to do in terms of Middle East policy? At the end of the day, it really is going to be him driving the agenda. And that's going to be both on foreign policy but on domestic policy as well. So I think it's important for people to recognize where these individuals who may very well be joining the cabinet have been in terms of their records and their stances. But the reality is President-elect Trump right now has taken over the Republican Party, and those who are in the Republican Party, both on the congressional front as well as members who will be joining his cabinet, are going to be aligned with his policy. he's driving all of that right now, both on foreign policy and domestic side as well.
You mentioned the Middle East, and you mentioned Israel. Mike Huckabee being named and announced by Trump personally as his choice to be the new ambassador to Israel. Mike Huckabee and Donald Trump have said things in the past about annexing the West Bank or not recognizing the existence of the West Bank as separate and independent as a state from Israel. Where do you think this administration approaches the conflict there? I know maximum pressure on Iran, but on the Israel-Gaza West Bank question, the two-state solution, where do you think it lands on that one, Matt?
Honestly, I think we're going to have to wait and see. You know, the reality is I think we're just going to know more once President-elect Trump is sworn in January. Again, on the campaign trail, he did talk about bringing people to the negotiation table. He did talk about wanting to not start any new wars. So my gut tells me it's going to come down to trying to promote peace, bring people to the negotiation table. But I think we're just going to know more beyond that, of course, you know, once he's sworn in. And whether it's on, you know, Israel, on Middle East policy in general, whether it's on Russia or Ukraine, you know, the reality is we will certainly know more starting off once he's sworn in. But the truth is, I suspect he is in Florida right now, already putting the pieces together here for his foreign policy agenda. The reality is I think he recognizes that time is his most valuable asset, and you can't wait until you're sworn in. Right now, it's getting the right people in place. That's what truly matters right now, the right team in place.
So Matt, do you think it is a foreign policy they're going to draft on this particular conflict to try to broker a peace in Israel and with the Palestinians? Or do you think it is to empower Benjamin Netanyahu to win the conflicts that he is waging right now? Because the two could go in different directions. What's your sense?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I hate to be repetitive. I think we're at the wait and see. I'd hate to say, you know, I would know right now, but I think a lot of people don't know right now. But here's who will know. It's President-elect Trump. And, you know, I do think right now he is, to your point, though, putting these pieces together. I suspect he's down in Florida working day in and day out, both on domestic issues, but on foreign policy, whether it's related to Israel, whether it's related to Ukraine or Russia. You know, regardless, I think right now it is a moment of putting the pieces together. And part of those pieces, to be honest right now, is putting the right personnel in place. You know, as a president, you matter, but whether it's your Secretary of State, key ambassadors, your senior staff, those who represent you, particularly in foreign policy, on the foreign policy stage, the global stage, that really does matter. In order to effectively drive your foreign policy agenda, you got to have the right team in place. And I think right now the biggest thing he's doing is getting the right team in place. To answer your question, I think we will get there and knowing more very soon here, but I think right now it's getting the right team in place. Right.
Well, Matt, look, it may be redundant, but it's also prudent because I'm asking you to predict what Donald Trump is going to do in the future, and that is a very difficult thing for anybody to do. But thanks for being here with us as Republican strategist Matt Terrill. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.